Maybe I need to add one to this class too. All right, you guys ready? Okay. All right, so for chapter 11 test, things you need to know. You need to know on page 317, acous. Acous, that it means hearing. You need to know that cor, C-O-R, or C-O-R-E means pupil. Make sure you know that my ring means tympanic membrane or eardrum. Know that phac, P-H-A-C or P-H-A-K, means lens of the eye. You all should know by now E-N means in or within, and E-S-O, S-O means inward. This is on page 318. Exo means outward. Make sure that you know cusis means hearing. Cusis, C-U-S-I-S. Know that that means hearing. Just kind of think of that one like acoustic, right? Cusis, acoustic. Ptosis, same page, is droop, sag, prolapse, or protrude. So ptosis, kind of remember like your sister has a big toe and she's always falling, or those kinds of things, because it's basically like when the eyelid falls or something falls in the eye. Tropia means to turn. Tropia means to turn. Page 319. Make sure that you know that the conjunctiva is the clear, colorless mucous membrane that lines the eyelids and covers the anterior portion of the eyeball. So that's that clear coating that's over the whole front half of the eye. Anterior is front. Page 320. We talked about the choroid. So the back of the eye has the retina, and then the rest of the inside of the eye has the choroid, which is a dark pigmented, highly blood-rich area, and the dark pigment prevents light from scattering inside the eye. So if the inside of the eye was shiny, when light hit it, it would cause distortion in your vision because you see bright spots, kind of like when you're trying to get a picture outside on a bright day. So the choroid is a highly pigmented area that prevents light from scattering inside the eye. Know what the iris is. So it's the pigmented, colored muscular layer that surrounds the pupil, and it's what actually makes and controls the size of the pupil. The iris is what actually dilates or constricts to shrink or increase the pupil. That's the color part. And the pupil, of course, is the black opening in your eye that allows light to pass through. I'm on page 320. Know that the lens, also called crystalline lens, is a clear, curved, flexible structure, and its primary function is to focus images on the retina. So its primary function is to focus images on the retina. The way that it focuses those images is the ciliary muscles adjust its shape by pulling on it and making it thinner or thicker to help your eye focus on objects. That whole process of focusing is called accommodation. That whole process of focusing is called accommodation. Make sure you know that. So on page 320, bottom of the third paragraph. Your lens is divided into two chambers. We talked about that before. You have the anterior and posterior chamber. So the eye is divided into two chambers, anterior and posterior. The anterior chamber contains the aqueous humor. The anterior chamber contains the aqueous humor, which helps give the eye its shape. The posterior chamber, and I'm still on page 320, the posterior chamber contains the vitreous humor, which is a thick gel-like substance. And it helps keep the retina in place. The retina is the back of the eye, and it contains the photoreceptors. And those photoreceptors are what convert light into nerve signals. So the photoreceptors are what convert light into nerve impulses. Those photoreceptors are made of two different types. You have your rods, which are black and white vision and night vision. So you have the rods, which are black and white vision and night vision. And then you have your cones, which are colored vision. In the back of the eye, you have the macula, M-A-C-U-L-A, and this contains specialized high-density cones used for high acuity vision. Remember that it is the photoreceptors, the rods and the cones, that generate the nerve impulses, while the optic nerve merely transmits those impulses from the retina to the brain. In the back of your eye, where the optic disc comes through, you have a blind spot because there are no rods or cones there. So in the back of the eye, where the optic disc and the optic nerve comes through into the eye, there are no rods or cones there, so you have a blind spot. Make sure you know that. Lateral to each blind spot in your eye, in both your eyes, is the fovea centralis, right there, and that is your sharpest area of greatest visual acuity. So it's the area of greatest visual acuity, or the area of sharpest vision, and it's a tiny pit. It's a tiny pit that contains only cones. So fovea centralis, tiny pit that contains only cones, and it's the area of greatest visual acuity, or the area of sharpest vision. All right, page 321. You have the lacrimal gland, which are located above the outer corner of each eye. So you have the lacrimal glands, which are located at the outer corner of each eye. And they secrete lacrimal fluid, or tears. You also have ciliary glands, which are where your eyelashes are, and they secrete sweat to help make a protective lubricant on the eyeball. The ear. Know that the ear is divided into three areas. You have the outer ear, basically the ear canal, so the auricle and the ear canal. You have the middle ear, which is the tympanic membrane to the oval window in the eustachian tube. So it basically contains the ossicles, the backside of the tympanic membrane, and the eustachian tube. And then you have the inner ear, which is going to be your cochlea, your semicircular canals, and the vestibular cochlear nerve. So while the outer and middle ear are involved in hearing, the inner ear is involved in both hearing and equilibrium, which makes sense because this focuses sound, this transmits the sound to your eardrum, this converts it into mechanical waves, and then the cochlea and the illuminative corti convert it into nerve impulses, whereas the semicircular canals, that's that Carpenter's levels we talked about, that gives your body your position and balance. If you have a question, you good? We already talked about the auricle, or the pinna, P-I-N-N-A. It's the bell-shaped structure of the outer ear, and it directs sound into the auditory canal, or ear canal. And the pinna is also called, or the opening of the ear canal is also called the external acoustic meatus. External acoustic meatus. That's on page 321. So we talked about cerumen is earwax. So the cells that secrete it are going to be the ceruminous glands, and they line the walls of the auditory canal. And cerumen is also known by its name of earwax. The middle ear, is that portion right there, is a small air-filled cavity within the temporal bone. And your tympanic membrane is also known, of course, as the eardrum. Know that the smallest bones in your body are the auditory ossicles, those three bones right there. And their function is they transmit the vibration of the eardrum into the cochlea, which moves the fluids in the inner ear. There are three small bones. You have the malleus, or the hammer. You have the incus, or anvil. And then you have the stapes, or stirrup. So make sure you know the three bones in their order. Incus, or malleus, so hammer, hits the, malleus hits the incus, which is anvil. So the hammer hits the anvil, and that moves the stapes, or stirrup. Your eustachian tube, also known as the auditory tube, it equalizes the pressure within the ear by draining fluids from the middle ear into the pharynx. The inner ear, so the cochlea, is a labyrinth, which just means the twisted tunnels. And it's a maze-like structure made of several membrane-lined channels deep within the temporal bone. The cochlea is a snail-like structure of the inner ear, and it contains special fluids called perilymph and endolymph, through which the sound vibrations travel. So the sound waves go to the organ of corti, page 323, which makes the tiny hair cells move. And the tiny hair cells are what actually transmit all that motion into neural impulses that the auditory nerve takes to the center of the brain's cerebral cortex. The vestibule, which is up here, connects the cochlea to the semicircular canals. And the semicircular canals are what give you your balance. And then finally for the ear, remember that the auditory nerve is called the vestibular cochlear nerve. And the reason it's called that is because it has two branches. The cochlear branch, which gives you the sense of hearing, and the vestibular branch, which gives you your balance. All right, the nose. So on page 324. So smell is generated in the nose by the olfactory receptor cells, which is then taken to the brain through the first cranial nerve, or the olfactory nerve, and it transmits those neural impulses to the olfactory bulb, which is the structure in the brain where it originates from and where the information about odors is processed. The tongue, page 325. So the tongue is covered in papillae, which are small raised areas that contain the taste buds. So papillae, small raised areas that contain the taste buds. But the oral cavity itself is filled with thousands of taste buds. While most of these are on your tongue, a few are found on the soft palate and the inner surface of the cheeks. So on page 325, you have 5 basic taste sensations: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. Umami means meaty or savory taste sensation. Page 326. The skin. The skin contains specialized nerve fibers located in the dermis of the skin that act as sensory receptors for temperature, touch, pain, and pressure. Temperature, touch, pain, and pressure. So TTPP. All right. Diseases and conditions. Amblyopia. Amblyopia is impaired vision in one or both eyes, resulting from altered development in early childhood, and it's also called a lazy eye. So ambly, the eye's kind of like walks off on its own, right? The other eye's lazy, doesn't follow with it. Know that a cataract is a clouding of the lens that results in decreased visual acuity, and it's from proteins building up on the lens of the eye. On 327 now. Ectropin is eversion turning outward of the eyelid, is typically the lower eyelid, which often leads to redness, pain, corneal breakdown, is generally associated with aging. I always think of the basset hound eyes, right, with the eyes kind of hanging down like that. So that's going to be the ectropin. Intropin is where that bottom eyelid starts to turn inward. So intropin is where it starts to turn inward or is inverted. And this causes, of course, the eyelashes to constantly rub against the eye and cause irritation and can potentially cause corneal abrasions. All right, and so this one isn't in the book, so I want you guys to write down what I say. So, most vitreous floaters are harmless. Most vitreous floaters are harmless. Vitreous, V-I-T-E-R-O-U-S. So most vitreous floaters are harmless, but they can be a sign of retinal detachment. So prolonged vitreous floaters, especially if you have bright flashes or a descending shadow that's coming down, is a retinal detachment, which is the retina detaches from the back of the eye. Retinal detachment. Yep. But most vitreous humors are harmless. Very good. No presbycusis. Presbycusis. That's age-related hearing loss. Presbycusis, page 333, bottom, is age-related hearing loss. Ageusia is absence of the gustatory sense of taste. So agusia is absence of the gustatory taste. And osmia is absence of the sense of smell. And osmia is absence of the sense of smell. I'm on page 336 now. Remember that a visual acuity test is done using a Snellen chart. S-N-E-L-L-E-N. It's right up there. And that a Snellen chart consists of rows of consistently smaller letters or shapes. A Snellen chart consists of consistently smaller rows of letters and shapes. Know what otoscopy is? Know what otoscopy is? Remember that it's visual examination of the ear canal with an otoscope. With an otoscope. Remember that tuning fork tests are any number of hearing tests that use tuning forks to assess the ability to detect sounds of different pitches. It's on page 338. Graphesthesia is a test in which the patient is instructed to close their eyes and identify a number, so like a graph, like it's recording. So you're going to write a number or a letter on their hand, and they have to tell you what it is. If they get it wrong, it shows abnormalities in the nervous system. Stereognosis is where you place an object in their hands, different one in each hand, and they have to identify what it is. And if they get that wrong, that also shows abnormalities in the nervous system. Be able to write out what LASIK is, laser in situ keratomy, and know that it's where they use an ultraviolet laser to correct refraction errors of the eye. You'll be able to say what the acronym LASIK stands for and what it means, what it is. All right, be able to tell me what enucleation is. Enucleation, which is surgical removal of the entire eyeball, performed when the eye is irrevocably diseased or damaged. So enucleation is surgical removal of the entire eyeball, performed when the eye is irrevocably diseased or damaged. And then finally, be able to tell me what a scleral buckle is. A scleral buckle. That's where they take a band of silicone, they go inside your eye, and they use it to buckle the retina back into the back of the sclera. Someone's had a detached retina, so they go in, they take a silicone band to reattach the retina to the back of the sclera inside the eye.